I never planned on telling this story. Not here, not anywhere. But something about the anonymity of the internet, and maybe the guilt I've been carrying around for months, finally pushed me to write everything down. If this post ever gets deleted, maybe that's for the best. But for now, this is the only place I can unload what's been sitting inside me, rotting me out from the inside. I live in a small town in northern Pennsylvania. The kind of place where people still wave when they pass you on the street, even if they don't remember your name. The kind of town with one high school, one gas station, 2 bars, 3 churches, and way too many people who think they know your whole life story based on who they saw you talking to in the grocery store. Population just under 15,000. Quiet. Predictable. Safe. Unless you count what people do to each other behind closed doors. Unless you count how long people hold grudges. Or how they spread a rumor with more enthusiasm than they put into raising their kids. I was 24 when it happened, working at a small equipment repair shop on the edge of town, fixing lawnmowers and snowblowers for people who usually remembered to pay me a week late. I had a pretty simple routine. Wake up, go to work, come home, play video games, repeat. I didn't date much. Didn't party. Didn't do anything worth gossiping about. And then she moved into town. Her name was Claire. I didn't know her age at first, but I could tell she was older than me, maybe early 30s. She had this confidence about her, the kind that made everyone else in the room seem like they were trying too hard. Dark hair, a little wavy, usually pulled into a loose bun. Green eyes that always looked like she was thinking about something she wasn't saying. She carried herself like someone who had lived more life than this place could offer, someone who didn't belong here. The first time I saw her was at Harper's Diner. I was grabbing lunch on a Tuesday, sitting alone in my usual booth near the window. She walked in wearing a long tin coat, even though it wasn't that cold, and the whole diner seemed to pause for a second. Not dramatically, just long enough that I noticed it. Harper, the waitress who'd served me since I was 12, raised an eyebrow like she was trying to figure out if she knew this woman from somewhere. Claire didn't look around for a seat. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight to the counter and ordered coffee, black. No smile, no small talk, just calm and precise. Like she'd rehearsed this town in her head before stepping inside it. But the real story starts the second time I saw her. Our shop wasn't busy that Thursday, so I was sweeping the floor when the bell over the door chimed. I didn't look up right away. I assumed it was Old Man Taylor coming to complain about his tractor again. But when I finally glanced over, I froze. It was her. Up close, she looked even more out of place. Not in a bad way, just different. Like someone who should be working in an art gallery in Chicago, not standing in a dusty repair shop that smelled like oil and old grass clippings. "Hi," she said, offering a small, polite smile. "Are you the one who looks at equipment?" Her voice was soft, but steady, confident. It threw me off more than I expected. Yeah," I answered, brushing my hands on my jeans. "That's me." She set a small electric chainsaw on the counter. "This stopped working yesterday. I'm not sure if it's the wiring or the motor." I examined it quickly. "I can take a look. Shouldn't take more than a day." "Perfect," she said. "I'm still settling into my new place, and this is kind of important." Settling in. New place. That explained why I'd never seen her before. She started to fill out the repair form, but paused halfway through. "Do I need to put my full address?" she asked. "Just the street name is fine," I said, trying to sound casual, like I wasn't fascinated by this stranger. She nodded, wrote something down, then handed the clipboard back. "Thanks," she said. "I appreciate it." And then she left. But something strange happened the moment the door closed behind her. I realized I still smelled her perfume. Subtle, floral, warm. It lingered in the air longer than she did, and I hated how much I noticed it. I didn't know it yet, but that moment would come back to haunt me. Because the address she wrote down, the street she lived on, it was the one place in this entire town nobody talked about without lowering their voice. And I should have taken that as a sign. I didn't. I didn't think much about Claire after she left the shop. At least, that's what I told myself. But the truth is, something about her stuck in my mind like a splinter. Not painful, just impossible to ignore. Maybe it was the way she held herself, or the way she spoke like she'd already figured out the world and was waiting for the rest of us to catch up. Maybe it was the street she'd written down. Willow Creek Road. Most people in town avoided that place unless they had a reason to be there. Not because it was dangerous, but because of the house at the end of it, the big, old, 3-story one that used to belong to the Winters family. And before you imagine something gothic or haunted, no, it wasn't spooky. It was just tainted. The Winters had been involved in some ugly business years ago. Money fights, accusations, police cars showing up at odd hours. A scandal that made the local paper 3 separate times. Eventually, the family moved away, leaving the house empty for almost a decade. So when someone new signed the deed, the gossip started immediately. And that someone was Claire. I got that confirmation the next day when I drove out to return her chainsaw. It really did only take a day to fix. It was just a loose wire and a clogged switch, but I could have stretched the repair to 2 or 3 days easily. The shop was slow, but for some reason, I didn't. I worked fast, like I wanted an excuse to see her again. I hated recognizing that about myself. Willow Creek Road was quieter than I remembered. The kind of quiet where the sound of your own tires feels too loud. The house came into view slowly through the trees. 3 floors, pale blue paint peeling at the edges, big wraparound porch. It wasn't falling apart, but it needed someone who cared about it. Maybe that's why she bought it. People who move to small towns sometimes treat them like places to heal. I parked by the curb and walked up the front steps. Before I could knock, the door opened. "You're fast," she said, surprised but not displeased. I held up the chainsaw. "Easy fix." She stepped aside. "Come in." I didn't expect her to invite me in, but I followed anyway. The inside was warmer than the outside, both in temperature and atmosphere. Not cozy, the house was still mostly empty, but she'd added touches, a rug, a stack of books, a mug half finished on a windowsill. There were boxes in the corner, some open, some labeled with neat handwriting. She moved around them with an ease that made it look like she was already used to this place. "Coffee?" she asked. I almost said no. I should have said no. But instead, "Sure." She poured us each a cup and nodded toward the living room. We sat on opposite ends of an old couch that looked like it came with the house. "So," she said, warming her hands around her mug, "you've lived here your whole life?" "Pretty much." "What's it like?" "Honest version." I shrugged. "Quiet. Some people love that. Some people go crazy. I haven't decided which one I am yet." She smiled at that. A real smile this time, small, unguarded. "And you?" I asked. "Why move here? This isn't exactly a tourist town." Her smile faded a little. Not all the way, just softened. "I needed a reset," she said. "Pennsylvania seemed like a good place for that." That was vague, but I didn't push. I didn't have the right. She sipped her coffee, then looked at me with this intensity. Not romantic, not flirtatious. More like she was studying me, trying to decide if I was someone safe to talk to. "You know," she said slowly, "most people warn me not to pick this house." I nodded. "People here like to hold on to old stories." "That's what the realtor said too." She set her mug down. "Do you believe in that? Old stories?" I looked around the room, at the sunlight catching dust in the air, at the house that clearly needed work but had so much potential. "Stories matter," I said, "but they don't have to decide anything." She let out a quiet breath. I like that answer. For a few moments we sat in silence, and I noticed how comfortable it felt. How natural. Like we'd known each other longer than 2 short conversations. Then she asked something that threw me off completely. "Do you ever feel like you're being watched in this town?" I blinked. "By who?" "Not anyone specific," she said quickly. "Just in general." I shook my head. That's kind of how small towns work. Everyone's always looking at everyone else. "Right," she murmured, not fully convinced. I didn't understand then what she meant. I didn't understand why she asked that question. I didn't understand what she was afraid of. But I would. Soon. I finished my coffee and stood. I should get back to work. She walked me to the door. "Thank you again." "Really?" As I stepped outside, she added, "See you around?" It wasn't a question. It was a promise. And against all logic, against every gut instinct I should have listened to, I wanted that promise to be real. I didn't see Claire again for almost a week, but that didn't stop her from occupying every spare corner of my mind. I kept replaying our conversations, her questions, her expressions, that strange moment where she asked if people were watching her. Most newcomers complained about boredom or slow Wi-Fi, not invisible eyes. Part of me wanted to stop thinking about her altogether. Another part wanted to drive straight to Willow Creek Road and check if she needed help unpacking. I didn't do either. I just let the week pass, doing my job, pretending I wasn't waiting for something to happen. It happened on a Friday evening. I was closing the shop when I heard footsteps outside. Not unusual. People sometimes dropped equipment off after hours, but when I opened the door to switch the sign to closed, I found Claire standing on the sidewalk. She wasn't holding anything. No tools. No broken appliances. Just her, in a dark green jacket, hands tucked into the pockets, hair pulled loose around her face. "Hey," she said. "Am I too late? For a repair?" I asked. "For company." I froze. She must have sensed it, because she immediately added, "Sorry. That sounded weird. She exhaled sharply. "I needed to get out of the house. And you're the only person I know here who talks to me like a normal human being." I stepped aside. "Want to come in?" She nodded. The shop looked different in the evening. Quieter, dimmer, almost peaceful. Claire walked slowly between the shelves like she was studying a museum exhibit. She brushed her fingers over a row of spark plugs, a box of screws, the handle of a lawnmower. "You really fix all this stuff?" she asked. "Yeah. Someone's got to keep the neighborhood grass short." She laughed softly. "You're funny without realizing it." I wasn't sure how to respond to that, so I busied myself with cleaning a workbench that didn't need cleaning. She leaned against the counter, watching me. "What's on your mind?" she asked suddenly. I hesitated. "You came here tonight. That's new. Is it okay?" "It's fine. Just unexpected." "That makes two of us," she murmured. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't pry. Instead, she wandered to the back of the shop where we stored half-finished projects. She stopped in front of a dusty old snowblower I'd been meaning to fix for months. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. Do you ever wish your life was bigger?" I set my wrench down. "What do you mean?" "More complicated. More exciting. Less predictable." I thought about that longer than she probably expected. "I don't know if exciting is the right word," I said. "But yeah, sometimes it feels like I'm just waiting." "For what?" "I have no idea." Claire looked at me then, really looked at me. Her eyes were softer this time, like she finally recognized something familiar in me. "I know that feeling," she said quietly. Before I could ask more, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked the screen, my boss reminding me to lock up the back door. "I have to close," I said. She nodded and followed me outside. The evening air had cooled, and the sky was turning purple behind the rooftops. She wrapped her arms around herself. "Do you walk home from here?" she asked. "Sometimes. Mind if I join you?" And just like that, we started walking. The streets were nearly empty, just a few porch lights flickering on, a dog barking somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of a passing car. Claire walked close enough that our shoulders brushed occasionally, though I couldn't tell if it was intentional. "So," she said after a minute, "are people here always this curious about new faces?" "Mostly," I said. "Some already asked me who bought the Winters house." She tensed, just for a second. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That I didn't know much about you." "And if they asked again?" I shrugged. "Same answer." Her posture relaxed slightly. "Thank you." We turned onto Oak Ridge Street, and she slowed down. "This is close enough," she said. "I can walk the rest." "You sure?" "Yeah." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Tonight was good. Really." She took a step backward, then stopped as if debating something. Before I could speak, she reached out and touched my wrist. Just a light touch. Barely there, but enough to make my heart trip over itself. "Don't disappear," she said. Then she turned and walked away, her silhouette fading into the dimming street. I stood there a long time, watching until she vanished around the corner. I didn't know it yet, but that night, the walk, the touch, the way she said "don't disappear," was the moment everything shifted. The moment the line between curiosity and something deeper blurred for both of us. It was also the moment her past finally caught up with her. But I wouldn't understand that part until later. Much later. I didn't see Claire the next day or the day after that. And even though I told myself she probably just needed space, something about her sudden disappearance bothered me. Not in a clingy way, more like a quiet alarm going off in the back of my mind, telling me something was off. By Monday afternoon, the worry had grown into something harder to ignore. I kept replaying her last words, "Don't disappear." It didn't make sense that she'd say that and then vanish herself. Around 5, just as I was closing the shop, I heard rapid footsteps outside. The door swung open, and Claire stepped inside, breathing hard like she'd been running. She wasn't dressed like usual. Her hair was tied back messily, and she was wearing a loose hoodie with sleeves pulled over her hands. Her eyes were wide, not scared, but alert. Too alert. Can we talk? She asked. Yeah, I said, trying to read her expression. Everything okay? No, not really. She looked around the shop as if checking whether we were alone. We were. My boss had left an hour ago, and the street outside was quiet. Claire, I said gently, what happened? She swallowed hard. Someone was outside my house last night. That single sentence hit me like cold water. Did you call the police? No, she said quickly. It wasn't like that. They didn't try to break in. They just stood there. Who? I don't know. And that's the worst part. She moved deeper into the shop, pacing slowly between the workbenches. I woke up around 2 a.m., she said. The motion light in the driveway was on. When I looked out the window, someone was standing next to the fence. Not moving, just watching the house. My grip tightened around the wrench I was holding. Could have been a neighbor, I said, even though I didn't believe that. No, she said sharply. They weren't from this town. I frowned. How do you know? She hesitated, then added, because I've seen them before. My heart dropped. Where? Claire's eyes darted to mine, then away. Before I moved here, she said quietly. Before everything. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but I forced myself to keep my voice steady. What do you need from me? She stopped pacing. I need somewhere to breathe. Somewhere safe for a few minutes. Somewhere that isn't that house. Okay, I said. Sit. She sat on a stool near the workbench, elbows on her knees, hands clasped. She was shaking, even though she was trying to hide it. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know who else to go to. You don't have to apologize. You don't even know me, she whispered. Maybe not, I said. But I can tell when someone needs help. She laughed softly, a broken, exhausted sound. So what now? I asked. She looked up. Now I tell you the truth. At least part of it. I leaned against the counter, bracing myself. I didn't move here for a reset, she said. I moved here because I had to disappear. The room felt colder. There was someone, she continued. Someone I trusted. Someone older. Someone who didn't like hearing the word no. A bad feeling crawled up the back of my neck. When I tried to leave, she said, he threatened me. At first I didn't take it seriously. But then small things started happening. Messages. A car following me. My apartment door left open when I knew I'd locked it. Her voice trembled. He wasn't just angry. He was obsessed. I stepped toward her. Claire. No, let me finish. She wiped her eyes. I saved money. I packed what I could. I changed states. I chose a town small enough that no one would look for me here. You think he found you? She nodded slowly. I'm almost sure. I ran my hands through my hair, trying to think. What does he look like? Did you see? No, she said. I only saw a silhouette. But the way they stood, the way they faced the house. I just knew. Silence settled over the room. Deep, heavy. Then she looked up at me, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. You didn't drag me, I said. You walked in the door. That's it. She gave me a small, grateful look. And then, almost as if she couldn't help herself, she leaned forward until our shoulders touched. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't planned. It was something human. Something raw. I stayed still, letting her breathe. After a few minutes, she straightened up. I should go, she said. I'll walk you home. No, she said firmly. It's better if you don't. Claire. If he's here, she said, I don't want him noticing you. When have I ever cared about that? I asked. But she shook her head. Please. Just tonight. I didn't like it, but I nodded. She stepped toward the door, paused, and said one more thing before leaving. If anything happens, if anything feels wrong, promise me you'll stay out of it. I can't promise that, I said. She closed her eyes, looking both frustrated and relieved. I figured, she said softly. Good night. She walked out into the dark. I didn't know it then, but this was the first night Claire wasn't the only one being watched. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the silhouette Claire described, standing by the fence, still, patient, waiting. I kept wondering why she didn't want me walking her home. Why she thought involving me made things worse. Why she thought I'd just stand by and do nothing if someone threatened her. By morning, I made a decision. I was going to check on her. Not because she asked. Because I couldn't sit still while knowing something was wrong. But before I could head to Willow Creek Road, something happened that changed everything. It was around 9. I had just unlocked the shop and was dragging a crate of parts inside when a police cruiser rolled up and parked right in front. My stomach tightened. We didn't get many cops in this neighborhood unless someone's lawnmower got stolen, which happened exactly once in 5 years. Officer Davis stepped out. He was older, with a mustache that made him look like he walked straight out of an 80s movie. "Morning," he said, adjusting his belt. "You got a minute?" "Sure." He stepped inside with me, his boots echoing on the concrete. "You're the one who talked to the new woman. Winter's house, right?" he asked. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Why?" He scratched his cheek. "We got a report last night." My pulse jumped. "About what?" "Light on in the driveway. Figure near the fence." Caller didn't identify themselves. It had to be Claire. She told me she didn't call the police. Unless someone else reported it. "Did you check it out?" I asked. "We drove by," he said. "Didn't see anyone. Could have been a deer, could have been a drunk. Hard to say." I clenched my jaw. "What makes you think I know anything?" I asked. "Well," he said, looking at me with that small-town cop squint. "Folks said she's talked to you more than she's talked to anyone else." So? "So if she's got trouble following her, and you know about it, I need to know too." I weighed my words carefully. "She didn't tell me anything about calling you," I said. "And she didn't mention being in danger." Technically true. She didn't say those exact words. She said she was running from someone. She said she saw a man. She said she was hunted. Davis didn't look convinced. "If you hear anything," he said, stepping back toward the door, "you let me know." "Sure." He paused in the doorway. "That house, it doesn't need more rumors." His eyes locked on mine for a moment longer. Then he left. The second he pulled away, I grabbed my jacket. I was going to Claire's. Willow Creek Road felt different in daylight. Bigger somehow. Emptier. The trees swayed gently in the wind, and the Winters house looked almost peaceful, like it hadn't been part of anyone's nightmare. But as I walked up the path, I could feel something else in the air, something tight, tense. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I hesitated, then reached for the doorknob. Locked. I walked around to the back, stepping over patches of uneven ground. The backyard was quiet, except for the creak of the old swing hanging from a half-dead tree. I checked the windows, dark. No movement. Then I noticed something by the fence. Footprints. 2 sets. One small, one larger. The smaller ones led to the house. The larger ones didn't. They stopped at the fence, then disappeared into the trees. I froze, staring at them. The ground was still soft from last night's rain. Whoever had been here, it wasn't long ago. My phone buzzed suddenly, and I nearly jumped. A text. Unknown number. "Don't come here." My blood ran cold. A second message came in immediately. "Please, go home." It was her. I typed back fast. "Are you safe?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. I stood there, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles ached. I knew she didn't want me involved. I knew she was trying to protect me. But the prints in the ground, the silence in the house, the panic in her texts. There was no version of this where I walked away. I tried calling. Voicemail. I kept looking around the yard, scanning the trees, the fence line, the shadows. Nothing moved. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had moved, recently, and that it might return. Eventually, I forced myself to leave the yard. People in small towns talk. Someone would notice me lurking around her place, and Claire didn't need that kind of attention. But as I walked home, one thought gnawed at me. If she wasn't at the house, if the man she feared had found her, where was she now? And why? If she truly wanted me far away, did part of her message sound like a goodbye? I was halfway down Main Street when I saw him. A tall man leaning against a black car across from the grocery store, staring straight at me. Not casually, not curiously, deliberately. And he didn't look away when our eyes met. He smiled. Small, slow, knowing. My stomach twisted, because I didn't know who he was. But I knew exactly who he had come for. And he knew I knew. I don't know if there's a clean way to explain what happened next, because that winter turned into one long chain reaction of choices I wasn't prepared for. Some were hers, some were mine, and some were things we both silently agreed to ignore until they got too big to pretend away. After the night we found her ex's box in the attic, something in Claire shifted. At first, it was subtle. She became quieter, more aware of her surroundings, like someone who kept checking over her shoulder even in empty rooms. Then it turned into long stretches of staring at her phone, her face tightening every time the screen lit up. She never answered those messages in front of me. I didn't push. I told myself she'd talk when she was ready. but a part of me had already started to brace. Around this same time, my boss at the hardware store offered me extra hours. Winter storms were coming in, and people were panic buying generators, salt, and space heaters. The money was good, and I figured working more would calm my nerves and give Claire the space she clearly needed. Instead, it gave her space she used in ways I hadn't expected. One night, I got off work early, like 6:30 instead of 9. I didn't text her I was leaving. I thought surprising her with takeout would be sweet and maybe shake her out of whatever dark cloud she'd sunk into. Her house was dark except for the warm lamp in the living room, the one by the bookshelf. I could see her silhouette through the sheer curtain. She was pacing. Not like she normally paced when anxious. This was fast, sharp, like she was arguing with herself. I knocked. She froze. I could see it. Her outline going rigid, her hand lifting to her face like she was wiping tears or frustration away. She took so long to unlock the door that I almost walked back down the steps. When she opened it, she wasn't angry. She wasn't sad. She was exhausted. I remember saying, "I got dinner," and lifting the bag like an idiot. She said, "You weren't supposed to be home yet." Not in a guilty way. Not in a caught red-handed way. More like she was afraid I'd witnessed something she hadn't wanted anyone to see. I tried to keep my voice level. "Were you expecting someone else?" Her eyes widened, and she answered fast, too fast, "No." We ate dinner quietly on the couch. She didn't touch most of hers. Then she leaned into me and rested her head on my shoulder like she always did, but it felt like she was trying to disappear into me. Like I had become a shield against whatever she'd been pacing about. After maybe 10 minutes, she whispered, "He keeps texting me." I didn't need to ask who. She continued, "He knows about you." My chest tightened. How? He saw us at the grocery store. And he told me. He told me he wants to talk. That he wants to fix things. My jaw clenched so hard I felt my teeth ache. "Do you want that?" "No." She finally looked at me. But he's not the kind of man who accepts no. The next words she spoke have stayed with me. He never forgave me for leaving him. And he won't forgive me for being happy without him. That was the first night I felt actual fear, not just for her, but for the two of us together. Over the next week, strange things started happening around her house. A fresh footprint in the snow under her bedroom window, even though she didn't have neighbors on that side. Her mailbox bent like someone had yanked it open too hard. A small rock hitting her front door late at night. 3 distinct taps, like a signal, not an accident. She tried to brush it off. It's probably kids. But we both knew kids weren't leaving boot prints heavier than mine. Then came the night she got the voicemail. She was in the kitchen washing dishes when her phone buzzed. She dried her hands, listened, and the color drained from her face in seconds. She handed me the phone without a word. The voice was a man's. Calm, measured, almost polite. "Claire, I know you're scared. You don't have to be. I just want closure. But if you keep avoiding me, you're going to force me to come find you. And we both know you don't want that." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Call the police," I said immediately. "I tried," she whispered. "Last year. They told me he wasn't making threats. That I should document anything concerning. I wanted to break something. Instead, I said, then we'll document everything. And he's not getting anywhere near you. Not while I'm here." She didn't say anything to that. She just leaned into me again, arms wrapped around my waist like she was holding on for dear life. But here's the thing I didn't know yet. While I was preparing to protect her, she was preparing something else entirely. Something that would turn both our lives inside out. And it started with a single decision she made 2 days later. A decision she didn't tell me about. Not until it was far too late. 2 days after the voicemail, Claire went quiet in a way I had never seen before. Not anxious. Not scared. Something colder. Like she had slipped into a version of herself built for survival, not living. I didn't realize then that she'd already made a decision without telling me. It would take another week for the truth to crawl out. But the first sign appeared that morning when she stepped out of the shower wrapped in a towel and said, too calmly, "I'm going to the library today." It was a normal sentence. Completely ordinary. Except Claire hated the library in winter. She always complained it smelled like wet coats and old carpet. And she never went alone. Her ex knew that too. I asked if she wanted me to drive her. She said no, she'd walk. I offered to walk with her. She said she needed to clear her head. I should have insisted. Instead, I let her go. She came back 2 hours later with a manila envelope tucked inside her jacket. She didn't mention it. She didn't let me see it. She slid it onto the top shelf of the hall closet when she thought I wasn't looking. I pretended not to notice. That was my mistake. Over the next couple of days, her behavior became even stranger. She cleaned the kitchen at midnight. She unplugged her lamps before bed. She turned off her phone every time she went to the bathroom. I asked what was going on, and she always said the same thing. I just need time to think. But there was something else, something sharper, lurking under her voice. And then one night, she finally broke the silence. We were in her living room, a storm beating against the windows, the kind of heavy Midwest rain that makes the whole sky sound angry. She sat cross-legged on the couch, staring at the curtains like she expected them to move. Then she said, "I need to tell you what really happened with him." I didn't breathe. She didn't look at me. She spoke like she was reading a confession from a teleprompter hidden somewhere on the wall. We didn't just break up. I didn't just leave. It was worse than that. Much worse. There was a long pause, long enough that I thought she wouldn't continue. Then she said, "He didn't let me leave. Not really. Not until I took something from him." The room felt colder. "What did you take?" She swallowed. "Evidence." She let the word hang there. He had been doing something illegal, something she knew enough about to get him in serious trouble, something he'd threatened her over, something he'd said would ruin them both if she ever went to the police. She never told me what it was. Not the details. Only that she'd recorded something she wasn't meant to hear, and he'd realized she had it. "He said I owed him for that," she whispered. "He said I'd regret it for the rest of my life." I felt a pulse of anger so sharp it almost made me dizzy. "And that's what's happening now? He wants it back?" She nodded. "And you still have it?" Another silent nod. "Where?" When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "Hidden. Not here. Not with me. Somewhere he'll never find it." I felt like the floor tilted, because suddenly everything made sense. The pacing, the secret envelope, the sudden trips outside alone. "What did you do, Claire?" She wrapped her hands together so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I mailed it." My heart dropped. "To who?" Her eyes finally met mine, and her stare was flat, unblinking, almost frightening in its calm. "To someone who hates him more than I ever could." I leaned forward. "Who?" "Claire, who did you send it to?" "My sister." I blinked. I didn't even know she had a sister. "She lives 3 states away," Claire continued. "And she promised me if anything happens to me, she'll go straight to the police with it." I needed a moment to absorb that. "So you set a trap?" "No," she whispered. "I set a clock." Her voice trembled again. "He doesn't know where it is. He only knows I'm not scared of him anymore. That's what's driving him crazy. He's losing control." I rubbed my forehead, trying to process. "Claire, this is dangerous. You need to tell the police everything." "They won't help me," she snapped, then lowered her voice. "They never helped me." Her breathing grew shaky. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "I'm not letting anything happen to you," I said. She shook her head. "You don't understand. He's not going to stop." Another thunderclap rattled the window. Then she whispered something I didn't expect, something that changed everything. "He already broke in once." My blood went cold. "When?" She pointed toward the attic. "The day we found that box." My vision tunneled. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because he didn't take anything. He just left something behind." Her breath hitched. "A message." I stood up slowly. "What kind of message?" She closed her eyes like the memory hurt. "He left a photo of us. Taken through the window. From outside." The room went dead silent. My pulse hammered so loudly I could hear it in my ears. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't harassment. This was an escalation. And I suddenly understood what Claire had been preparing for. Because the man she feared wasn't just coming back. He was already here. The night she told me about the photo, sleep became impossible. Not for her, and not for me. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind tapping the siding felt like someone testing the windows. We stayed on the couch until sunrise, the two of us staring at the front door like it was a countdown. But morning didn't make anything better. Because around 9 a.m., Claire's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She opened it, went pale, and handed it to me without saying anything. It was a picture of the two of us, taken through the living room window. From last night, my arm around her, her head on my shoulder, the lamp glowing behind us. Underneath it was a message. "I liked the one from the attic better. You used to smile more." I felt a wave of anger so strong it made my hands shake. Claire reached for me. but her fingers trembled too. "This is enough," I said. "We're not waiting for him to get bold. We're going to the police now." "No," she whispered immediately, gripping my wrist. "We can't. If they go to him before I'm ready, before my sister is ready, he'll panic. And if he panics—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. She was scared of what he'd do. But I was more scared of what she wasn't telling me. Because she looked less terrified now and more determined. Focused. Like she wasn't just reacting to him anymore. She was planning something. I decided to push. "Claire, what aren't you saying?" She looked away. "It doesn't matter." "It does." She pulled her hand back. "He's not going to stop because I asked him to. He's not going to stop if we hide. He won't stop until something forces him to." Something in her tone made my throat tighten. "What exactly do you mean by forces?" She didn't answer. 3 days passed. 3 days where the world shrunk to the size of her house, her job at the art store, and me walking her to and from it. She stopped going anywhere alone. But he didn't stop. New messages came in. Never threats. Always suggestions. "You used to keep your curtains open. Your boyfriend thinks he can protect you. He can't. You know how this ends if you don't cooperate." One morning, we walked outside to find the trash can tipped over and the lid pried up like someone had been searching through it. Claire's hands shook so badly she couldn't pick up the pieces. I did it for her. Among the scraps, I found a crumpled piece of paper I knew instantly wasn't ours, a printed screenshot of Claire's sister's LinkedIn profile. I froze. He had found her sister. Claire saw my face change and whispered, "Please don't say anything. I can't handle it." But she already knew. That night, she disappeared into the attic while I was cooking dinner. When she didn't come back after 10 minutes, I followed her. The heating vent made the whole place feel like a cold lung. She sat on the floor by the rafters with the manila envelope beside her. The same envelope from the library. She didn't realize I was behind her until I said, "What's in it?" She inhaled sharply, then placed her hand on the envelope like she was guarding it. "The only leverage I have," she whispered. "The only reason he hasn't tried to take me yet. Show me." "I can't." "Claire." She turned then, her eyes glossy with fear and something harder underneath. "If you see it, you're part of it." I crouched in front of her. "I already am." Her breath shook. Her fingers brushed the flap of the envelope, and for a moment I thought she was going to open it. Instead, she placed it behind her, out of my reach. "You need to trust me," she said softly. "There are things I did before I met you. Things I hid. Things I hoped would disappear. And they didn't." "No," she whispered. They turned into him. Her shoulders trembled. I put my hands on hers. "Whatever it is, we'll deal with it together." She shook her head. "Together won't protect you." Her voice cracked. "He wants to destroy me. But if he thinks you're in the way, he'll destroy you first." A chill went through me. "Claire, what exactly did you send your sister?" She looked right into my eyes. "Proof that he's not just stalking me." She swallowed. "Proof that he killed someone." The silence after that was suffocating. I felt my stomach drop, like the attic floor had dissolved under me. "Claire, you..." She cut me off with a whisper. "And he thinks I still have the original." I sat back on my heels. Everything snapped into focus. The surveillance, the messages, the photo in the attic, the digging through the trash. He wasn't trying to win her back. He wasn't trying to scare her. He was hunting. That night, I barely slept. Not from fear, but from the horrifying realization that Claire wasn't just preparing to defend herself. She was preparing for war. And there was one more truth she still hadn't told me. A truth I would stumble into the very next evening. A truth that would change everything I thought I knew about her, and about what she was truly capable of. The truth, the one that shattered the last pieces of the woman I thought I understood, arrived the next evening in the quietest, most ordinary way possible. With a sound. A soft, metallic click from Claire's bedroom. I was in the hallway folding blankets when I heard it. Not a door. Not a drawer. Something small, mechanical. I froze, listening. Another click. I knocked on her door. "Claire." No answer. I opened it slowly. Her bedroom lamp was on, casting warm light across the bed and across Claire, kneeling beside her nightstand with the drawer pulled all the way out. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't even surprised to see me. She just looked resolved. But what stopped me cold was what she was holding. A gun. Black. Compact. Clean. Not dusty. Not neglected. Loaded, judging by the weight she handled it with. "Where did you get that?" I asked. She didn't flinch. I bought it after I left him. Claire, are you? I took the classes. I registered it. It's legal. That's not what I'm asking. She rested the gun on her thigh. Her fingers curled around it like it was familiar, like it had been there before. I'm not going to die because of him, she said. I stepped closer slowly. No one is dying. She shook her head. You're still thinking like someone who believes in rules. He doesn't live in rules. He lives in outcomes. She slid the gun back into the drawer, closed it, and leaned against the bed frame like she was suddenly exhausted. I need you to listen, she murmured. Really listen. I sat down across from her. She took a long breath. You think he's stalking me because I left him. But that's not why. He's stalking me because he thinks I betrayed him. And did you? Yes. The answer came so fast it nearly knocked the air out of me. She continued quietly. When I found out what he did, what he was involved in, I recorded everything I could. Conversations, phone calls, locations. I collected names. I kept notes. Why didn't you go to the police then? I tried. They didn't believe me. No witnesses. No physical evidence. Just a scared woman, shaking and rambling. So you kept it? Yes. And he found out I had it. Not the content, just that I recorded him. That was enough to make him spiral. I let the silence settle before asking. And the envelope? With the leverage? She stared at the floor. It's not just a recording. What else is it? She lifted her eyes slowly to mine. A confession. Not from him. From his partner. My stomach turned. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because once you know, you can't pretend you don't. Her voice cracked. And if he thinks you know, you're dead. I swallowed hard. So who did he kill, Claire? She looked away. A man who threatened to expose them. Then she added, barely audible. Someone he said he'd take care of. And he did. I exhaled. Jesus. But Claire wasn't done. Her hands shook as she rose to her feet. She went to her closet, pulled out a shoebox, and set it on the bed. She opened it. Inside were printed photos, timestamps scribbled on the margins, locations, license plates, a ledger, names, a flash drive, a burner phone, documents filled with handwriting that wasn't hers. I didn't touch any of it. This is what's in the envelope, she said softly. A copy of the most important pieces. Enough to destroy him. I stared at the photos. Claire closed the box and sat beside it, suddenly small, suddenly fragile. He thinks I still have the original. He thinks the envelope is just a backup. But he doesn't know that what I mailed wasn't the evidence. I frowned. Then what was it? She hesitated, and then dropped the real truth like a stone. A letter telling my sister everything. Every detail. Every name. Every crime. Everything I'd been too scared to put in writing until then. I blinked. You wrote it all down? Yes. Claire, if he finds that letter. He won't. Her voice hardened. My sister hid it. And she made copies. I sat down heavily. I felt sick. The scale of this wasn't just larger than I expected, it was catastrophic. If he finds out what you mailed, that's why he's following me, she whispered. That's why he's watching us. He's wondering if I slipped. If I panicked. If I finally told someone. Her voice broke. And he's waiting for the moment he can be sure. I didn't have words. I didn't even know what words existed for a moment like that. But then Claire looked up at me, truly looked, and said something I will never forget. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to stay away. Because if he thinks you matter to me, he'll use you. I shook my head immediately. I'm not leaving. I'm not walking away. You should. I won't. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears slipping down her cheeks. And then she whispered the one sentence that froze me to the bone. Then you need to know the full truth, because he's already here. She pointed toward the window. I turned. A man stood across the street, still as stone, facing the house. Hood, hands in pockets. Watching us. Claire's breath hitched. That's him, she whispered. That's how it starts. And that was the moment I realized. She hadn't been preparing for war. She had been waiting for it. And now, the war had arrived. He didn't move. Not when I stood. Not when I stepped closer to the window. Not when Claire grabbed my arm and whispered, don't. He just watched. Like he had all the time in the world. The streetlight behind him turned his silhouette into a dark cutout. No face. No features. Just a shape. A presence. A warning. My heartbeat thudded so loudly I could feel it in my throat. He won't come inside, Claire whispered. Not yet. I didn't look away from the man. How do you know? Because he likes this part. The fear. The waiting. He's not getting near you. I said. He already has, she replied. He stood there for 20 minutes. Not walking, not hiding, just being there. Then, without any hurry or fear, he turned and walked down the street. Slow, calm, almost bored. Like he wasn't worried about us calling the police. Like he knew it wouldn't matter. Claire was shaking. I grabbed my phone anyway. I'm reporting it. No, she said sharply. You can't. Not yet. You keep saying that. Claire, you're in danger. We're in danger. She corrected it quietly. But then she said the thing that actually stopped me. Reporting him now will make him disappear again. And when he disappears, he gets worse. She wrapped her hands around my wrists, trying to steady them, or trying to steady herself. He doesn't escalate in public. He escalates in private. He'll wait. He'll hide. He'll make plans. And then he'll come back when he knows we're not ready. I swallowed hard. So what are we supposed to do? Just wait for him to make a move? No. We make one first. I thought she meant running, or hiding, or calling her sister. Anything rational. But Claire didn't mean rational. She meant revenge. Real revenge. The kind that rewrites the whole story. She took the shoebox from her closet again, opened it, and pulled out the flash drive. This has enough to put him away forever, she said. But the police won't touch it unless they get it from the right source. Your sister? No. Someone higher. She held up the drive. Federal. Claire, that's dangerous. So is doing nothing. She stood, pacing. Her steps were sharp, focused, confident in a way that scared me. You asked why I didn't run, she said. Why I stayed all these years. Why I didn't burn everything and disappear. I didn't answer. She turned and looked at me. Because I didn't want to survive him. She stepped closer. I wanted to end him. Her voice was cold, steady. And I can. I just need you to trust me. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did she. We stayed in the living room, all the lights off, whispering plans like fugitives. The plan was simple, but the danger beneath it wasn't. 1. She would reach out to someone she'd trusted before. 2. Someone who owed her a favor. 3. Someone who didn't fear him or the men he worked with. 4. Someone who knew how to hand evidence to the right people quietly. Who is this person? I asked. She hesitated. My ex-boss. He used to work federal cases before he retired. He'll know exactly who to contact. And he's the only one I trust not to leak it. I nodded slowly. And what do you need from me? Her eyes softened in a way that hurt. I need you to be ready. For what? She looked away. For when he realizes he's losing. The next afternoon, Claire made the call. She spoke quietly, calmly, like she'd been rehearsing the conversation for years. When she hung up, she said, tomorrow. We meet him tomorrow afternoon at the station. Not the police station, the train station. I frowned. Why a train station? He doesn't want to be traced to us. And he knows it's one of the busiest places in town. Cameras everywhere. Safety in crowds. It made sense. But something in her voice felt off. Like she wasn't telling me the whole plan. And she wasn't. The next day, we drove to the station. Claire clutched the shoebox like it contained her heartbeat. She was quiet the whole ride, too quiet. The kind of quiet where thinking becomes dangerous. Inside the station, her ex-boss, Hale, was waiting near the ticket machines. Older man, stiff posture, gray hair, eyes that looked like they belonged to someone who had seen too much and pretended he hadn't. Claire walked to him. I stayed a step behind. They didn't hug. No handshake. Just a nod of familiarity. She handed him the shoebox. He lifted the lid, looked inside for only a second, shut it, and whispered, "This is enough." "For all of them?" Claire asked. "For all of them," Hale confirmed. "I'll get it where it needs to go." She exhaled, but then Hale pulled her aside and whispered something to her. I couldn't hear. Claire's eyes snapped up at him, then flicked toward me. Something was wrong. Very wrong. When she returned, her face was white. "What did he say?" I asked. She didn't speak at first. She seemed to be searching for the right words. Then, he said, he wasn't the only one watching the house. My blood ran cold. Who else? She swallowed. Someone working with him. I grabbed her hand. Then we need to leave. Now. But before we could move, Hale turned to me and said, "Son, you need to listen. Get her out of town tonight. Stay somewhere crowded. Somewhere he can't get close." I nodded, ready to run. But Claire didn't. She pulled her hand from mine. And that's when she told me the last, deepest truth she'd been hiding. He won't stop following me if I run, because he doesn't want the evidence. and he doesn't want revenge. Her voice cracked. He wants me. She looked at me with pain so sharp it felt like a wound. And he won't let me go unless one of us ends this. For the first time, I saw Claire not as a victim, but as someone preparing to sacrifice herself. No, I said, shaking my head. We ended together. Her lips trembled. And then, finally, she let herself cry. We didn't go home that night. We didn't go anywhere alone. The evidence was gone. The truth was moving. The hunt had shifted. And in the heart of a small American town, under the weight of years of fear, secrets, love, and rage, Claire and I prepared for the ending neither of us could avoid. Because some stories aren't about escape. Some are about confrontation. And ours was heading exactly there.